Do you want to live your best life and feel like there could be a little bit more happening at work? Maybe think about the attributes of the people you work with. Hey there, Daniel Hartman, Community Machinery, Sackville, New Brunswick. I made my list of attributes of people I would really want to work with. First one is being a people person. Now, I would love to be a people person. Actually, the reason that's on the list is these are a lot of the attributes I would want for myself. And they're also things I would really want in others. So, being a good match to attract these things into our lives sometimes also means growing those parts in ourselves. So being a people person means communicating well, being inviting, being including, working with people that I would want to have for my friends, and the communication goes into having really clear agreements, talking about what's really important to us right up from the get-go as far as how much money something is worth. If we have something in our inventory, do we need to get cash money for that? Do we put it on a trading list? Do we just switch back and forth between someone else's stuff and our own so that it doesn't even make sense keeping track because we're just going back and forth so much? Who knows? But having that conversation, creating that agreement, that's the number one step. So next thing, always having a positive message. So really saying what we do want instead of focusing on behaviors we don't like. Say, hey, could we talk more about agreements? Could we communicate more? Could we take a little bit of time first thing in the morning before the day gets away from us just to have a little morning meeting to get on the same page? Stuff like that, amazing. Even just, as I was saying, working with people that we want for our friends, where if we have a thought and we're really enjoying what we're doing, it's easy just to send a text message. It's not like a nagging work thing, but just like, hey, this is a thought I had. What do you think about this? Or here's something I'm thinking about. If you start thinking about it right now, then by the time we see each other, we'll have just had our subconscious working on that thing. And we'll just be ready to have a really solid conversation. So next thing, unity. Just having a real consensus before moving ahead on something and really moving beyond the idea of compromise. I really love a lot of Stephen Covey stuff about third alternatives. Something between my way and your way. There's this third alternative, this third way of doing things that works out even better than our own individual ideas. And there's a lot of books like The Wisdom of Crowds, as far as if everyone makes a guess on how many jelly beans are in a jar or how much a pig weighs at the country fair, if you average out everyone's response, it's likely to be more accurate than any individual person. Not to say there's not going to be some people that are going to be spot on, but the average of everyone works out in our favor. I don't know how true those things are, but I like thinking about those things. It'd be interesting to do an actual case study to know if those things are legit, but it sounds good. Anyhow, the next one, peacemaking. When I hung out with the Nature Connection crowd, there was a story of someone who had trained all these teens so they could just basically go with a knife into the woods and they'd be able to make their way. They'd be able to start a fire, they'd be able to get their food, make their shelter, everything. And this leader went to this other leader who just had a lot of experience in terms of what people come up against in the woods, especially from a cultural mentoring standpoint as far as knowing all the little checks and balances that need to take place in a culture. And they said, what are we going to come up against? And it wasn't anything to do with skills, it's the peacemaking, conflict. When people are up against their edges, peacemaking is the number one thing. How to be diplomatic, how to share words of gratitude, how to do all these nice little things that sometimes we can take for granted, that we didn't learn in Western culture. Those are the things that really get us through the tough times, seeing people's gifts, seeing people's positive attributes, and focusing on the things we can do instead of the things we don't know and the uncertainty and the fear. I'm not saying, well, even just having the compassion to be able to embrace those things, having the empathy to go and sit with those uncomfortable feelings. All those things are really great peacemaking skills. So one of the things I was introduced to years ago was this idea of the peacemaker principle. Always work for peace, always work for unity, always carry a positive message. So that came up in here as well. So that would be the number one thing as far as someone else to work with. Next thing, focused conversations. Being to the point sometimes instead of starting a conversation, and I know I've had challenges in my life doing this, starting to one little conversation and it splinters off into 50 different stories before I get to the point of what the thing was. So just knowing how to be really concise, giving yes or no answers or asking a really concise answer or a concise question that flushes out what that person is really looking for, where their question is coming from. And doing that, being ready to serve the other person as far as, oh, are you asking about what material we have on hand because you want some for home? Is this a project that someone is urgently wanting? Is it just something you're curious about? And then being able to serve that person when they say, oh, it's just an idea I've been thinking about, instead of, oh, it's a job I'm really urgently needing. Oh, sure, use that stuff. I'm not going to use it for the next 2 weeks. So sometimes knowing how to have a really pithy conversation. The fireworks in the background, they really add. This is what I'm doing with my Friday night when the fireworks are happening for Fall Fair. Anyhow, so next one is grounded and methodical in their approach. I've worked with retirees, I've worked with young people. I know when I was young, I was not grounded, I was not methodical. Having someone that at least has that somewhere on their radar. I mean, there's some people that are just so high strung. I don't know where I would start to relate. I would try, but that would be an edge in terms of, so I would really appreciate someone who's grounded, someone who's methodical in their approach. Next thing, sense of humor. Because really, what's this life all about? Having some good laughs, having some fun at work. I remember some places where there was a bouncy ball that got thrown across the shop the odd day. So things where it's safe to have some fun that's on some levels inappropriate and just comes out of nowhere. And not to say that I would necessarily throw a bouncy ball around in here, but it is kind of fun thinking about those things that are off the wall in terms of taking a minute and kicking a soccer ball around if there's a safe little spot to do that, or jumping a rope, or just making some jokes, goofing off, making cat calls, whatever it takes. Just anything for a good little laugh or some good turns of phrase that are funny, some inside jokes, any of that stuff, definitely fair game. Willingness to try things that are outside the box. So that also goes with sense of humor as well, in terms of integrating a sense of humor into prototyping things. If it's worth doing poorly, but also, oh hey, I want to try building this thing, and just testing things to the point of failure. Maybe something that's supposed to be designed out of steel, make it out of a piece of wood and just see what happens. That's not a really great example. I wish I had a really great example for this one. Maybe we'll come back to it. So, a desire to share the responsibility for making a viable business, sharing the profits as well, because you can't do the one without doing the other. If you're going to all be responsible for the rent, the insurance, putting out a positive image, you got to really share the profits, all of it, and really have open books so everyone knows where everything is at, and it's really transparent, because even in a profit sharing program, you really need to have open books to be able to show people where the numbers are coming from, what's working, what's not. So, I was once really interested in worker cooperatives. I'm still really interested. I just didn't find anyone who shared my same passion, and still working on my people skills to find other people who are that interested, that are willing to take a certain investment and make something like that happen. So that was a little tangent. Okay, curiosity and understanding of what makes a product viable. A lot of people are like, hey, make this thing. It'll make you a lot of money. Where now I've tried that a few times on different things, and I've gone way too far down a rabbit hole figuring out a product, how to make it, or building the thing, and then no one wants it. Surprise! So really, if something is going to be viable, really knowing, oh, if it's that viable, there's got to be easily 20 people I could reach out to that are in that business, that use that tool all the time, that use that machine all the time, that I could call, and they would say, yeah, I would do backflips if that thing was available. let me give you a deposit, let me connect you to 20 of my other friends who all have the same challenge, let's create a focus group, let me do whatever I can, let me put my money where my mouth is, all those things. Viability, huge, huge deal. Sometimes it's worth taking a risk, but if you're betting the bank and you're going to go into business, betting on something, that's just not where I'm at right now. And yeah, so viable products. Passionate about social media. That's another thing about communicating in this day and age. And it wouldn't necessarily have to be social media, depending on what the product was, how local it was, or the community. Maybe it's going to trade shows. But it's some way to have a voice, to have a platform, to have a cultural identity about what a business, what a social enterprise is about, to carry that, to be looked upon as experts, to be the one when it's something that's in the news, that someone reached out, hey, Community Machinery, you're the experts. We want to have a little chit chat with you. That is way better than any kind of advertising, being the expert. So those are definitely really important things. How to put a really positive foot forward, what that really looks like in terms of, does the shop need to be looking perfect? Or is it just a matter of showing how you can be safe within your budget? What kind of things do we put forward so we speak to the demographic of the people who want the thing we're trying to offer at any given moment? So, next thing, happy to be in front or behind a camera. Always nice. Sometimes I could use a little hand making a video, but I also love figuring out how to work a camera and put someone else in their best light. How to have more flow for answering YouTube comments. Just how to interact with people in a way where it doesn't feel like there's another thing on the list. I know some people have these hobby YouTube channels and they do really well answering comments, and I don't know, I'm not there yet. But I do really appreciate when people comment or like or subscribe, whatever it is. Super helpful stuff. So, next thing, diverse interests outside of work. Now this is valuable in so many ways, from coming up with a diverse idea of products and things that are needed. I mean needed in the sense that nothing is really truly needed, but there's certain things that make people thrive. And those are the kinds of things I really want to produce. And if I'm working with someone else, those are the things I think are going to bring us really close together in terms of not just selling something because we could make money at it, but because there's meaning, there's purpose, that it serves others on the deepest level in terms of food, shelter, clean drinking water, a nice environment, things that feel nurturing, things that feel they connect people, that they allow people to have peak experiences that inspire other people, all those things. So, broad social network, that's also one in terms of when there's a business challenge. Do you have a friend that's an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor, a candlestick maker, whatever it is, that can ask, hey, we got this challenge, or we want to come up with some ideas on a product, or we just want to know we're being responsible here. What's the best way to carry out this project, this plan, our own internal passion projects, whatever they are, just to be having friends that have diverse interests, that have a lot of wisdom, that there can be this reciprocity. Because that's a really important thing in terms of also having people from other backgrounds that have a lot of expertise coming and asking us for questions, which really stretch our edges, get us thinking outside the box and innovating. So having a more of an external inspiration, influence coming in instead of us trying to always go out, that people would have these conversations with us. Just because of the kinds of people we are, someone says, oh, I want to build something out of metal. Well, these are the people to talk with. Or I'm thinking about a machine, or whatever it is that they would want to come and see us. Even if we're not interested in developing that thing, it just provides more options, provides a little bit of variety to the day. Anyhow, next one. Yeah. I had in my list go-to people to solve challenges. I think we talked about that. Go-to people to explore new ideas. feel like we covered that as well. So, last thing on my list, a shared vision of serving others. Oh, so one thing I really love, I've been really curious about charities, how charities work, what aspects, what things Canada Revenue Agency here in Canada requires of charities. So you can have your charitable purposes or charitable objects. Those two words get used interchangeably, it seems. So things like education, reduction of poverty, health, environment, equality, things that are really virtuous on all levels. So those would be the things I would really want at the core of anything that was a money-making endeavor as well, where there was overlap into things that would also be seen as being charitable, and that giving more viability for not just partnering with other businesses, but potentially the charities, because we might be the expert on building some kind of infrastructure a charity would need. So, yeah, that's the list. So anyhow, thanks for hanging out with me. It's Friday night here. I'm gonna go dancing, have a good time, get some mental space for Monday, which is gonna be coming in a couple days. Hopefully you're having a great time. Please comment, please like, please subscribe. And I'm gonna do my best. If anyone's got a comment about how to get better at reading comments, that's actually something I'm gonna maybe make a little video on as far as how I can up my YouTube game. Anyhow, thanks for watching. I'm gonna keep at that, and maybe someone else has some ideas on topics to cover for the future that they want to hear my thoughts on. Thanks again.